Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rewatch Project of Hannah and Mike. I am Mike, and with me, as always, is Hannah. How are you this evening, Hannah?
I've survived week 1 of school holidays and our daughter's birthday, including a birthday party, and I'd have to say I'm toast, but I'm ready for Babylon 5.
Okay, we are going to watch some Babylon 5. We've reached episode number 14 of season 1. So tell us about the episode we are watching this evening.
I really want to call it TKO, KO.
It's a love TKO, Hannah.
Okay.
Actually, because
I love TKO. I like that.
Because I got such a bemused expression from you last week when I sung that, and Mark from the Good, the Bad, and the Odd, bless him, jumped to my defence. So this is your boy Teddy Pendergrass. You've never heard this song?
I've heard the music to it, but I've never listened to the words. And there are far better songs out there.
When I hear the words TKO, my mind immediately goes to the song I Love TKO.
Well, I think mine has more to do with the fact we have an 11-year-old girl in our life.
Yeah, our daughter's weirdly not a Teddy Pendergrass.
She's all the time.
She's not a Teddy Pendergrass fan, unfortunately.
No, it's not her jam. She's far more Chapel Roan and Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, back to Babylon 5. We are watching episode 14, TKO.
It's a love TKO.
It's right up there with all of our rhyming to various things, I think. Okay, so synopsis says, a disgraced boxer comes to Babylon 5 to compete in the Mutai, an alien fighting match. Meanwhile, an old friend visits Ivanova so that she can mourn the loss of her father. It is directed by John C. Flinn III and written by Larry DiTillio.
Right, so I think we're firmly back in standalone territory.
Yeah, I would say so.
And I think, not to sort of influence things here, because often this can mean nothing, but I do believe that this is the episode with the lowest IMDb rating on the whole of Babylon 5.
Okay, it is a fairly low rating. It's 5.8.
You know, you and I do have a contrary streak.
And we have a certain penchant for episodes like Data and Tashiya hooking up, things like that, considered very bad episodes. Yeah,
we've got a high tolerance to crap.
Yeah.
And that serves as well sometimes with the 22
Is that
episode
rating?
seasons.
I hadn't noticed.
No, I don't know. I think maybe that's where we draw the line.
No, neither of us like that.
But yes, we will see. We will make up our own minds. But we are bracing ourselves for a bumpy ride on this one.
It's just nice to be back in the universe.
It is. But I mean, at the end of the day, even if this episode does knock us on our asses, at least it's a love TKO that did that.
I can't believe you got that in again.
So TKO, that's technical knockout. That's what that's short for, isn't it? It's boxing parlance, I believe. So
it's not total knockout.
No, I think it's technical knockout.
Okay.
It stands for.
Maybe total knockout was like total wipeout.
I think
I'm conflating the two.
I suspect that total knockout is what Teddy Pendergrass was going for when he wrote the song Love TKO.
Not Love Technical Knockout.
Yeah, it's a technical knockout.
Technically, you've knocked me out with your love. But not totally.
Yeah, it's Teddy Pendergrass, not Teddy Pedantic.
A Teddy knockout.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yes, that's the tale of the tape.
Indeed.
For
I've got some feedback as well.
Okay, well, actually, useful that you should mention that, because if you want to leave us feedback, you can do so either at rewatchprojectpodcast@gmail.com, or alternatively, you can leave comments on our YouTube channel and we will read them out if it seems appropriate to do so. It's also worth mentioning that we would appreciate it if you checked out the other content, the other film, television, music in general, pop culture related goodness that is also on the channel there as well. And I would say that if you listen to the podcast through conventional podcast means, do check out the YouTube channel because there's stuff on there that we don't put on the YouTube feed that is just more visual in nature. And also, yes, exactly. And likes and subscribes very much appreciated, because that makes a really big difference. It means more people find the channel. It results in more conversation, which is ultimately the primary motivator for doing these with a greater level of regularity. And last but not least, a reminder that we do appreciate donations via PayPal, but only if you can afford to do so without causing yourself any financial hardship, because we certainly do not want that. Feedback, Hannah.
So, from the coolest of cool daddies, he has said on our last episode, Signs and Portents, it's so funny to me how when asked what he found exploring the rim, Morden responds very Vorlon-like with a single word, yes, as if he had learned it from one of the first ones.
Yes.
He goes on to say, that box that I came in must be indestructible, considering how indiscriminate the Shadow was in dispatching the raider ship.
Yeah, it must be made out of the stuff that the little black boxes in planes are made.
Yeah.
I always think of the Bill Hicks thing where he's like, why don't they make the planes out of that stuff as well? And then they won't crash, you know.
He says it could have been damaged in the explosion, or are the Shadows good at jewellery work and fixed it up? LOL.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I did, the first time I watched this, I did think that. I'm just like, what? So is it just sort of floating around in space, or how did that work? So,
yeah. He also goes on to say, I thought the jump gate colours were indicative of the direction they were going. Blue for going out and yellow for coming in, going into hyperspace.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you, Cool Daddy. We always love hearing from you.
Appreciate it.
Now we have feedback from Frank C5466. He says on Signs and Portents as well, this is the payoff for the viewer's patience with the world-building episodes from the first half of Season 1. This is the kickoff of one of the show's primary story arcs. You can feel the scope of the show change.
Yes, you can.
Very, very true. He goes on to say, it's a little bit funny. Sorry, Billy Joel. It's a little bit funny how anticlimactic the eye ends up being. I compare it to the silver briefcase in Ronin. As a rule, JMS likes to subvert expectations and mislead the viewer with red herrings. In this case, the MacGuffin is just a MacGuffin.
So yes, thank you for those comments.
Thank you very much for those comments.
And we are back. So we've just finished watching episode 14 of season 1 of Babylon 5, which begs the question, Hannah, did you love TKO? Or did you just like TKO? That literally just came to me in a moment of inspiration. So what was your thought? What are your thoughts on this episode?
I thought they all fought with honour.
They did.
It's very much a standalone, and while I was watching it, I could feel myself thinking of different jokes to crack at various bits and pieces, which generally means that I'm not taking it super seriously.
Well, it's the same way that you would watch an 80s action movie.
Yeah.
You know, which this felt...
And had all the tropes of that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, a lot of the casting, there was a lot of people in this episode from cult films and straight-to-video action movies and those types of things. But anyway, sorry, please continue.
I liked how it followed that action trope of, you know, the guy that's got something to prove and he's coming up against something quite dangerous, and the people he's going to fight against seem to be the bad guys, but actually they're really honourable. And there's one shitheel who always tries to take you out just before the end, but the good guys get him.
Yeah. So in many ways, it goes from being like a hate TKO.
The Ivanova stuff was fine. It was pretty predictable. I mean, the performances were all good. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit, you know, of course she gets the vision of her father as he's about to get on the plane to go home and wait. It was fine. It was good. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it in a very popcorn way.
Yeah.
What about you?
I actually quite enjoyed this episode, but I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that this episode was very much what I thought Babylon 5 was before I actually watched Babylon 5. which is a entertaining, generic 90s science fiction series. Now, I think Babylon 5 is obviously a lot more than that. But this episode was precisely just that.
Yeah.
But of course, I like generic 90s sci-fi.
There's a place for it.
But again, this feels very much of a piece with shows like, shows that I like, like Quantum Leap and, Sliders and, those sorts of shows, Sequest, Star Trek Voyager, shows which just kind of, they do the job and they're entertaining.
First 2 seasons of TNG.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and we're watching this Friday night here in New Zealand, and that's a perfectly entertaining 45 minutes of television to watch on a Friday night. And you enjoy, and there's good moments, but you riff on it because it is knowingly...
It's that kind of episode.
Yeah, it's knowingly existing in that kind of, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, realm. And that was clearly intentional because a lot of the casting in this was people who were in those films. In
those genres,
And part of it is because obviously they needed people who had abilities with martial arts, or at least met the tropes or the cliches or whatever you want to call, however generous or unkind you want to be about that. But this was very much a, Christ, we've got to do 22 of these this year. Why don't we have one about a fighting tournament?
Actually, one thing I did really love on the Ivanova side of the story was the performance of the rabbi, in that he, it's very easy in these kind of episodes for the patriarchal character to be very disapproving and harsh and not joke around or attempt to see things from somebody else's point of view. And he does all of that. He's very accommodating and cares, and there's obvious compassion and
you sympathise more for him in many ways than Ivanova.
Yeah, you do.
You do. And it's interesting as well because that's Theodore.
Especially when she runs out of the restaurant. I just felt really bad for him.
I mean, he's played by a great screen actor called Theodore Bikel, who was in loads of things. But he played Worf's dad. Yeah. He played Worf's dad in Star Trek: The Next Generation, his human dad. And again, he played him as Russian in that. That's kind of his thing. So he's quite a good get for the show as well. But he brings
He just gives a really kind, loving performance, while still being, I suppose a parental performance.
Yeah.
Like, it is very, I love you, but I'm going to call you out on this and say you still need to do it, which is the role of a parent.
And I do think that there was some good stuff from a character perspective and also from a world building, but world building in the sense of just spending more time in there. Like, you get a sense of the diversity of people that are there and that everybody's got their own beliefs. I like the fact that Judaism still exists because, they've had a tough old time of it, haven't they?
They have had a tough old time.
And I think that you don't see religion in a lot of science fiction, particularly the Gene Roddenberry style of religion, and you certainly don't see it portrayed positively. So I think it's actually kind of refreshing to see Jews being shown in some kind of future context. I can't think of a single other example of that.
Well, also to have a Jewish ceremony shown not through the lens of any kind of conflict towards the ceremony or anything.
Or as victims.
Like, it really is a celebration of how, they grieve.
Yeah. I do also like the way that
Ivanova
says, we usually do this in Hebrew, but for my friend Jeffrey and the American television audience, we are going to do this in English. And it was like, oh, thank God. It's like, I just don't think I
My
can.
Hebrew to English dictionary out.
I can't handle Hebrew on a Friday night. It's I'm more about the Mutai on a Friday night
than the Shalom.
Yeah, exactly. But also, I do think there are some interesting insights and some interesting character things, because I like the idea that Ivanova just didn't tell anyone that her dad died.
It says a lot about her as a person.
Yes. And we didn't know that. It was like in the episode where her dad dies, we don't see her tell anyone. But you can put that down to, hey, it's a TV show. They've only got 43 minutes. She probably told them in between episodes, but no, she just...
P.S. My dad died.
She just didn't, because we know she's got all this conflicted stuff. But also, she just seems like somebody who wouldn't want... who would kind of be embarrassed by emotion and wouldn't want that to be wouldn't want to be the centre of an emotional conversation.
Showing vulnerability is extremely hard for her, and she doesn't want to be in a position where anyone sees it like a dent in her armour.
But also, you can see, like any good writing, because I think this is a well-written episode, that you can see everybody's perspectives, because I understand why the Theodore Bickle character would go to Sinclair and say, look, this has happened. And because he didn't know that Sinclair didn't know that she died. So it was a misunderstanding, and then he did that. But at the same time, I absolutely understand why she'd be pissed off about that, because it feels like a kind of betrayal of privacy. And when Sinclair says to her, no, you need to take the time off, he's doing the right thing and you sympathise. But when she says to him, look, how I choose to grieve is my business, nobody else's, she's right. They're all right.
Yeah. But they are coming from a place of kindness and love towards her.
Yeah.
Like, they're calling her out for her benefit. And whether she chooses to take that or not, they've left to her.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't taken away their friendship or their time.
No, but they understand the danger of unresolved emotion and
which
grief.
is why they've brought it up. But it's a bit like having a friend who calls you on your bullshit, but still there's no issue with your friendship as such.
They're not calling you out in a kind of gotcha.
They're not saying, if you don't do this, I'm never speaking to you again.
Yeah.
They're saying, for your benefit, you need to do this, because this is going to be better for you. Yeah. For your mental well-being.
And I think the other thing about this episode, I think one of the things that ultimately makes it a lesser thing is that it's just super tropey. It's a lot of the time when you look at sci-fi shows, it's like, I mean, particularly now, because when Babylon 5 came along, there's still only been a few seasons of Next Gen. Deep Space Nine had only just started. So now in 2025, we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of seasons of high quality science fiction. So all the stories have been told. So now when you do a sci-fi show, it's kind of like you've got the playbook. You're like, right, let's do the body swap episode. Let's do the Groundhog Day episode.
Let's do the musical episode.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all of these kind of things.
Yeah.
But this was still new. It was still to a point where they're like, it wasn't like, hey, let's do the boxing episode, or let's do this. But this does feel like one of those. It feels very much like you've got a sci-fi show, you've got this idea that you've got all of these diverse aliens, and you're like, how about an episode about a fighting tournament? All right, go and write it. It feels a little bit like that. And I think that what Babylon 5...
I mean, it is like Kickboxer in space.
Yeah, it is completely that. But I think that what Babylon 5 usually does better is that the standalone episode will be in some way connected to that.
Yeah.
And I think that the one of the difficulties with this episode, although you've got the Ivanova stuff, is ultimately the A plot and the B plot are both led by guest characters.
Yeah.
And that just results in a little bit of a so what.
And the only ambassador you see is Jakar whining and dining some chick behind...
I didn't even spot him.
Behind security guy.
Garibaldi
and his mate right at the start when they're having those burgers. He's like at the back going like this.
That's how Hannah Wines and dies me. She doesn't even talk. She just makes weird noises and shakes her head around.
You love it.
Well, You're scared to say
Two
otherwise.
kids later.
Yeah.
I really liked Stroke Off.
Stroke Off. Yeah. That's some great sci-fi swearing there.
Yeah.
Greg McInnery, who plays Smith, he's a great straight-to-video actor guy. He was in Mortal Kombat. He was in a bunch of Arnie movies, bunch of like Dudikoff and Van Damme. He was in that world.
The Mutai door. I thought he had the look of the old guy from City Slickers, but the alien version of him.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name is, but I keep expecting him to sing about the tumbling tumbleweeds.
Yeah, that's TKO, who's he's a great Asian American actor.
Yeah,
who's been in tons of stuff. Look him up on IMDb, and you'll recognise him. I love the fact that Ivanova is chuckling reading a Harlan Ellison book. Harlan Ellison being the sci-fi writer, Star Trek writer, Babylon 5 consultant, and Walker's story as well. This idea, and this is such a Van Damme thing, the idea of a disgraced fighter wanting to claw his way back to glory. That's just such a again tropey, and the idea that he's the first human to fight in Mutai. You see that in the Van Damme movies where he's the first Westerner to get involved in this. Steven Seagal movies would do that sort of stuff as well.
And you think that long-haired guy that is like lurking in the dark, in the shadows and stuff to start, is going to be like in it for nefarious reasons, actually he just wants to help the guy out.
And that's a classic Babylon 5 kind of expectation reversal. And that character's played by a guy called Don Stroud, and he's a great character actor. He's been in tons of genre movies, TV shows.
He looks a little bit like he could be Rene. Oh, yeah,
He's been in loads of films in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
That's him in Django Unchained, the Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
He's got a funny eye. I think he's got a scar across his eye that makes him very distinctive looking. But he's one of those actors who again,
who was Odo from
Rene Auberjonois. But I think it's
Rene
another
Aubergine. That's what I think every time.
I think it's more proof that the genre excesses of this episode, like them or loathe them, were a choice.
Yeah.
And not a failing.
I mean, I think what sets it apart and makes it inherently watchable is the writing is great. For what it is, the writing is great.
Well, also it is stuff we like.
Yeah,
which helps.
And the performances are all good. There's nobody not bringing their A game to whatever it is that they have to sell.
They're playing it just
perfectly,
just as well as if it was high drama kind of
100%. And there's got to be a place for that. Not everything is Breaking Bad or whatever. Like it just, there's got to be room for action and just those really general audience love them kind of storylines, and it's so nice to see that in a TV show. There's
also another thing about this episode that's interesting is this is another example, although the episode wasn't written by JMS, the character sort of Bible, the character biographies were, this is another example of him writing stuff for characters based on the real life experiences of the actors. Like I've talked before about a lot of the stuff with Jakar, but particularly with Delenn, you've got all the stuff about Mira Furlan's experiences in the former Yugoslavia, having to escape the country with her husband, and the war, and how he wrote stuff for Delenn knowing that she'd be able to bring that kind of lived experience to it. Well, with Claudia Christian, all the stuff about her brother, and I didn't know this. She told me about this. I did a podcast with her a few years ago, and she was telling me that her brother, when she was young, died in a really horrible accident that her and her whole family witnessed.
Oh, no.
And basically just destroyed her parents. And she talks about it as this awful thing. But her brother, just before he died, gave her an earring, and she wears it in the show. and they write it into the show when she talks about her brother dying in the Earth Minbari War, JMS wrote that in knowing about this experience that she'd had. And there's actually a scene later in Babylon 5 where Ivanova talks about this earring that her brother gave her before the Battle of the Line. And it's a really powerful scene, but it's because it's Claudia Christian talking about her brother. And, that's something that JMS does. And although, again, this episode's kind of a frivolous one, it is in there, and it is sort of, an interesting approach to take, I guess.
I think it says a lot about the performance and what they bring to the table, really. I mean, he's done such a good job of casting. I don't know who casted it with him.
Well, I think, again, it's that lived experience, like the actor Jerry Doyle.
This is what I mean.
Was an alcoholic, playing an alcoholic.
So many of the characters have got such a wealth of lived experience to bring to their characters. That's just quite amazing that they got such a rich cast together.
Well, like the guy who played Smith, when he auditioned, he told JMS how he'd experienced the live TKO. Sorry, I can't keep a straight face. And he was like, he's like, we've got the episode for you, mate.
Such a dick.
I couldn't get through. I was like, you got to keep the straight face or this won't work, Mike. JMS was like, I love TKO. My God, man. We've just written a script that you'd be perfect for.
Larry, I've got
come in here, mate. He's only got a bloody...
It's the guy for the
yeah. I found the Mutai guy.
Just such a goober.
So Ivanova talks about not being able to forgive her father for not being there for her, and Claudia Christian is a really, really good actress. She can do that sort of. You're right there.
I'm really tired. And you know that I can't stop laughing.
I've just ground you down, haven't I?
Oh God!
I had misremembered this episode. Right up until the last minute, thought that what happened in this episode was that Walker Smith got knocked out or something, and because Garibaldi was his second, had to take over, like Danny Zuko taking over from Kaneki at the end of Greece. He was, and Kaneki will come into Babylon 5 as spoiler alert, and that Garibaldi had to fight. I was convinced that was going to happen, but I was sort of like, they're not going to make it. Like there isn't time for just that. And then
surely this can't be continued.
Yeah. It's like really you felt compelled to make a two-part out of this. Like the whole of the second episode was just Garibaldi fighting this guy.
TKO part 2.
But yeah, that would have been unexpected. But no, I had just I
did too when I saw that.
I think it was because it just seems so obvious to do that. And that's the cliche.
And that really is the trope that your best mate or someone close to you will sort of tap in when you. And
also, you there's the temptation to get one of your regular cast directly embroiled in the situation, but no, he didn't. And in a weird way, it's kind of good. I think that this is one of those things where, because it's a 45-minute episode of television, if this was a movie, clearly that would have happened. Because they'd have had the extra time to play with. But
they would have gone more down the Rocky Apollo Creed.
Yeah. Danny Zuko Kaneki route.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm using them as examples. That was the first one that sprang to mind.
Because you love Greece.
Well, Danny had to, he had to drive Grease Lightning down at Thunder Road, didn't he? It's sometimes you just got to do that for your friends.
And Hickey from Kaneki couldn't do it.
It's like a hallmark. So he gains their respect, which is ultimately, what we all want. The respect of martial artist aliens is kind of what we all aspire to, isn't it?
I know it's all you aspire to in life.
I'd also misremembered the ending. where, you know, earlier in the episode where his friend turns around and gives him the thumbs up. In my mind, that was how the episode ended, with him walking off. Because you know how a lot of episodes of Babylon 5 end with people walking through the docking bay to leave? That he turned around and sort of went... And I was a little bit disappointed that it didn't go full Gorgonzola at the end, you know.
Freeze frame.
Yeah. Yeah. But like maybe Garibaldi did a little, you know, sort of jointly salute back, you know.
Or maybe you could go...
You know, it should have ended like that, or with a thumbs up, or like, you know, Burt Reynolds movies would often end with him going like that at the camera, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, look, if you're going to go cheese, then just go Stilton.
Go super cheese.
Yeah, go super cheese or go home.
Get those blue veins out.
Yes, well, quite. So, any final thoughts on this episode, Hannah, before we... let me just get that for you, shall I?
I feel like we needed this episode tonight. I needed to laugh.
There we go. Bit of Mutai.
Oh, it was worth it. It was good. And a good sort of...
a sorbet.
Sorbet, yeah.
If you will.
Yeah. It's not really a palate cleanser.
No. Well, what you'll notice with a lot of these TV shows, these long season TV shows, they always sneak in a crap one. Although I don't think this is a crap one, but for all intents and purposes, right after a big episode. And Star Trek would always do that. The amount of times where, like, if you see lists of weakest episodes of Star Trek, they're always the ones after absolute blockbuster two-parters.
Yeah. You
know, and Babylon 5, I think if they've got a script that they know is not working, because you don't want to have two of those back to back. That's how you lose an audience.
Yeah.
So I think that they're like, okay, we're going to have some pretty goodwill after this. But also, I think it's about diversity. It's about, you know, if you've got an episode that's extremely arc heavy and intense, you do want something different after that.
Where did that episode in Next Gen with the Scottish, with the doctor?
The sex candle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did that one come? Was it like after Chain of
Command? Yeah. I think that was after a pretty decent episode.
Yeah, because that was bad. Yeah, but good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
The next episode we're watching is episode 15, Grail. Synopsis says, a man searching for the Holy Grail arrives. Ambassador Kosh may be behind a string of attacks on the station.
Oh my gosh.
OMG. It is directed by Richard Compton and written by Christy Marks. I don't think we've...
Nope. I think that's the only episode that this person writes at Babylon 5.
She's oh my gosh, she wrote Gem. I love her.
There's a lot of people on Babylon 5 who come from animation backgrounds, because JMS came out of animation. Like, he worked on Masters of the Universe, Ghostbusters.
She wrote for the original cartoon Gem, which I was a huge fan of.
Cool.
And she wrote for the Gem movie.
Wow.
So, respect.
Quite a pedigree.
Quite the pedigree.
All right.
She is quite literally, truly outrageous.
Yes, exactly. Egregious.